Hello, everybody, and welcome on into Offsides and Out of Bounds. I'm Drew Patrick, and on the other window, that's George Tubby Schmidt. Tubby, here we go.
Here we are again. So I'm excited. I'm excited to do this because, and this is my dog Jackson, who has opinions, and he's going to express them whether I like it or not. It's just the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I knew he was going to do that. But yeah, I'm really excited to get back on this journey, get back into talking sports again, especially with you, my longtime partner, who basically we kind of grew up together in this.
Yeah,
If you
absolutely.
even though there's 20 years difference between you and I, but that's okay. That doesn't really matter in the world of sports talk, as it were.
Yeah. And also, we figure like there's so much talk right now about the negative, and obviously with uncertainty with the COVID-19 virus and everything. So, why not just give people an hour of hearing two people just talk nonsense about sports to provide an escape for people, right?
Right, because that we always focused on the lighter side, the nonsensical, the the stuff that never really mattered to anyone at any time, anywhere. And that's
Exactly.
and that's what
That's
we do.
perfect.
Yeah.
Well, before we get into our nonsensical stuff, let's of course start with the sports reaction and really the world reaction, not just the sports reaction, but the world's reaction to COVID-19. And obviously the right decisions were made. It sucks, but the right decisions were made.
Right. I mean, you can argue about whether overall federally, if the response was delayed and the way that it's been handled, but I think it's overall the way it's been handled where the majority of the hard decisions have been left up to state
Hmm.
have been a more beneficial way to deal with the pandemic. I mean, obviously now I've moved out of state. I now live in Ohio. I live in the Mecca that is Cleveland. Actually, I live just outside of it in a suburb, but close enough. Um, and the response here in Ohio, Governor DeWine has been doing an excellent job, in my opinion, as far as keeping the people informed, taking the right measures, trying to make sure that his hospitals are communicating. There's there's crosstalk or cross communication between different hospitals where they've all banded together to try to confront this as a healthcare organization, almost like a universal healthcare sort of way. Um, so that's been really nice to see. I've seen a lot of really good reactions and a lot of people being neighborly and reaching out to their elderly neighbors or those with young children, like, hey, I understand you can't go out right now. I'm going out. Do you want me to get you anything? That type of thing, kind of sharing the workload, if you will.
Hmm.
I've also seen a lot of bad. I've seen a lot of hits that would make those 80s films, the NFL films, the bloopers and the hits that they used to put out when we were
Uh-huh.
kids. It would make those films look like Disney G films, I've seen arguments in Walmart and Target and just the absolute worst and nastiness in people. So it's a balancing act, and we're all trying to learn new ways. I mean, for the longest time as kids were growing up, we were told get out of the house, go play with your friends. Now it's like, no, stay inside and play your video games.
Hmm. And I mean, too, with that, it depends on the area in which you live to stay and get out. Like the area I live is very rural, very open area. You have the benefit of being able to go outside and be outside, but obviously not go anywhere, but be outside, live in your space that you're in. So there's that benefit a little bit here. But yeah, I think you've seen a lot of good, you've seen a lot of bad. My mom is a ICU nurse, so she's at the front lines. Thankfully, knock on wood that there hasn't been any cases here that she's had to deal with. There's been cases from our county, but not in our hospital yet.
So I mean that's reassuring anyway, because it hasn't spread that far. I mean, as I look at the maps and you look at the containment and the infection rate, it's almost like an urban disease at this point,
Mm-hmm.
simply because of the high concentration of people in those areas. The only thing that's hard to judge is because you don't have definite numbers on how many people have been tested. So you don't have that comparison of like, well, I know there's, 3.3 million people in this area.
Mm-hmm.
Of those 3.3 million, I have, 2,000 cases of COVID, but I don't know how many of those 3.3 million have actually been tested and came back negative either.
Yeah.
And that's a scary thing.
Mm-hmm. So let's move and pivot to how this then affects the world that we want to live in here, which is the sports world. Obviously, everything was canceled, and the NCAA did make some decisions with the spring sports that are allowing those spring athletes to come back next year and be a part of the team, get an extra year of eligibility because they had their seasons ripped away from them.
Right. And I think that was the right decision. I mean, especially for you and I both know we've been very close to our alma maters and where you currently work, to their softball teams, to their women's softball teams.
Mm-hmm.
And, there is no real pro sport for these ladies to go to. Same with ladies lacrosse, which is a spring sport.
Mm-hmm.
There's no pro league for them. There's no next step. This is their, for those seniors, this is their last hurrah. And for them to have their season ripped away really before it even started. I mean, I believe they were in preseason play because our alma mater, Edinburgh, was in Florida for spring break for their usual preseason warm-up tourney thing that they do.
Yeah, I mean,
I think Mansfield was about the same, weren't they?
Yeah, Mansfield had a couple of games. A lot of schools had a couple of games already in. But you know what? I think this is great at the Division I level. But at the Division II level, it's going to be a little more difficult because most of those athletes really pay their own way for college, get minimal scholarship from the team itself, because a lot of small schools just realistically don't have the funds to keep these athletes on for another year. They've already made their commitments. They've already done a large portion of their recruiting for next season. So you have that income coming in. You have recruiting classes coming in, and then you have the possibility who some of these athletes, realistically for their own careers, they can't afford another $20,000 at least in debt to come back. So yes, this is a very nice gesture by the NCAA, and it's the right gesture by the NCAA. Just my worry is that it may be an empty gesture, and this just be a horrible, horrible thing that happened to these teams.
I mean, here's my thing, right? You can offer, because all you have to do is you have to take one class, right? To be a legal student of that university,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, I mean, without the, you can make it an FYE course, right? A 4-year entertainment course, right? At least that's how I consider them. And call it like, I don't know, media appreciation, right? Where you have to write one paragraph a week on something that you consumed through media. Like, did you read a book? Did you watch a TV show? Did you watch a movie or something? You want to make it something really simple. And then you can offer that course at like a discounted price, like $5, you know what I mean, for that single year, and offer it only to those 5th year seniors. But I identify with your point though, that like I mentioned earlier when we first started talking about it, there is no pro league for these ladies.
Mm-hmm.
So these ladies are now moving on to their career, be it nursing, secondary education, be it athletics, training, nursing, whatever their chosen field is. I mean, it's as varied as the students you have at your university, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they've already applied for internships, for job interviews. They've sent out their resumes with their
Grad
reference
program
letters. Yeah,
that aren't part of your school.
right. So, they're looking to move on and start the next phase of their life. So, do they put that on hold for one more year to, run the bases again? And realistically, how many girls are you talking about? I think Mansfield has maybe 6, 7 seniors, I think.
In terms of seniors, they had, I think, 8 off the top of my head.
Yeah, out of a 22 player team.
Yeah, it was
I don't know how big
a
the roster.
large portion of that team this year. But I mean, I'm looking at it too. Even at the Division II level, at a small school like the school we went to and the school I currently work at are small schools. And Mansfield, as just an example, doesn't have many grad programs as of right now. So you have people graduating who, I mean, they're taking their classes right now. They set to graduate. They're not going to want to come back and do or pay rent another year or do this without really getting the benefit, which stinks for them. And good coaches and good departments will be able to find the funds for it because that's what they do. That's their job. They're good at what they do. They'll be able to figure that out. It's just, it seems it's the right move, but also kind of a rough move. I do agree with the NCAA, though, and it stinks for them, too. But for the winter sports, them not getting an extra season for missing the playoffs.
That, to me, was the hardest thing. Because, I mean, for anybody that knows us or this show, whatever form it takes, knows that I'm huge into wrestling, especially Division I wrestling. And for those guys that I know from our alma mater that were like on the bus on their way to Minnesota for the tournament just to have them have it ripped out. Yeah. And I kind of get it because technically the season has been played, right? The only thing is there's just no winners. But, I mean, it's also a trickle-down effect because while the state of Pennsylvania did manage to have its wrestling tournament, its state wrestling tournament, and it was completed right before the weekend of the shutdown, the youth tournament didn't happen. So they tried pushing it back because, it was like, oh, well, let's just give it 2 weeks. Let's give it 2 weeks. And now here we are where the shutdown's going to last on to May, So, and by that time, these kids, you're talking about 12 and under, year-old kids, they're now playing baseball, if that season starts. Yeah. So I don't know. It's heartbreaking to me. I wish there was some way that they could make it up. Luckily, I think for our alma mater, we didn't have that many seniors or seniors that even qualified. So I think we're good. Like I'm still a part of that team or that university, but I don't know. It's just rough, in March was the only time I cared about basketball, cause I gave wrestling my heart and, it was like one weekend in March where it's the Division I tournament and then that tournament's over, but we still have March Madness, like the rest of the basketball season. And I get to see how well I failed at picking my bracket, which normally went with like 5 underdogs, and I picked the rest by the color of their uniform. And anybody but Duke or Kansas. That was that's Tubby's 3 rules to make a winning bracket.
Fair enough. So obviously, too, with this, the talk has been Are we going to continue things? Should we continue things? What will it look like when we're able to continue things? What does baseball do? Because you're not going to make up games in November. That's just not going to happen. Is the minor league season completely canceled? Obviously, two guys in their rooms are not going to be able to answer those questions.
No.
But talking about let's start with the two main sports that have the main American sports that have been in season and could potentially just pick up for the playoffs, and that being the NBA and the NHL. And I have written down here what those playoff matchups will be, which starting with the NBA in the East, 1-8 would be Milwaukee, Orlando, 2-7 Toronto, Brooklyn, Boston, Philly, and Miami, Indiana in the East. And in the West, it'd be the Lakers and the Grizzlies, the Clippers against the Mavericks, the Nuggets against the Rockets, and the Utah Jazz against the Oklahoma City Thunder. Should the NBA, if they decide ultimately to continue, which according to a lot of media that they're very pessimistic about the actual continuing of that season, but if they come back, should they just do a playoff scenario with those teams being in the playoffs?
I think you almost have to. Just simply because now you're competing. Well, I mean, you could do it, but it depends on how far you're going to push it. I think ideally, I like the idea of them going to a bubble city, right? And the way I got it figured and the way they could do it best, which I think would be awesome, is if they picked small colleges, right? Like, for instance, let's use Edinburgh University, right? It's out of the way, it's rural, and there's reasoning behind this because it's secluded and out of the way, right? Now you could use like another university like say Teal, right? But I'm not familiar with their facilities. But I know that Edinburgh has, they have Macomb Fieldhouse, they have the locker room downstairs, they have the weight room downstairs, but they also have the Z Dome, right? The big marshmallow, and that's a huge complex with like 4 or 5 basketball courts within it that teams could hold practices. Then with the dorms being empty, you could move the teams into each dorm, right? And you could essentially, Edinburgh has enough dorms to where you could assign a dorm per team so that the entire staff, the families, even if they wanted to, like bring like wife and kids, they could have, I mean, it would be close quarters, but you could have their entire community there and you'd set up like a river city, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then those teams only interact with, people coming in and out. You know what I mean? You wouldn't leave campus. Everything you would need would be there on that campus. And then the NBA would then pay rent to that school, right?
Mm-hmm.
For use of the facilities. And it would benefit a lot of smaller schools if they did it that way,
Really?
And then that way, because you have to limit travel, right? Because you're not going to do it traditionally like where
it would be in one place, and it would have to be a neutral place.
Yeah, because Cleveland isn't going to fly to Milwaukee, or you know what I mean, or say LA is not going to fly to Tennessee to see the Grizzlies. It's just you can't have that much travel going on. There's no way to contain it because you have to limit exposure. That's the key to the game.
The place I've heard a lot has been Vegas for a potential NBA playoffs. Before I get into the would this be a good idea, let's roll into what the NHL would be too.
Okay.
Hockey would be Boston against Columbus, Tampa and Toronto, and then on the other side of the East, it'd be Washington, Carolina, and Philly and Pittsburgh. Then in the West, it'd be St. Louis, the number 1, against Nashville, Colorado, and Dallas. And on the other side, Vegas, Winnipeg, and Edmonton, and Calgary. So would be having a playoff in a single city, which would probably be Vegas or your small school idea. Vegas for the NBA, and I have no idea where it would be for the NHL. I mean, the NBA
Yeah,
will run into the same thing too because of Toronto, but you have
right.
two countries
Yeah, you'd
trying to
have to
figure out
put
where they're going to play.
because see the only problem with the NHL, right? Like the NBA is a little bit easier because you can almost set up a court anywhere, right?
Hmm.
Because basketball courts, especially like the ones in the stadiums that you see every day, those are made to be torn up and put away somewhere. So you can have your courts shipped in, you know what I mean, and set them up essentially anywhere you wanted to, right? You could even take over, say, Lucas Oil Stadium and put like 5 courts on it, and do it if you wanted to. But I think it's difficult simply because for the NHL, because you have to find rinks, like you have to find ice space,
Hmm.
like you have to have competition ice, then you have to have practice ice, and where else are you going to find some place that has that many rinks?
It'd be an NHL team that would have to
Yeah, I mean, it would have
probably
to be an
host.
NHL city, but honestly, I think Vegas makes a better case for that simply because the amount of arenas
Hmm.
that are in Vegas that would have a surface large enough to where you could put multiple rinks. And I assume like you could ship ice in, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Whereas like you could do the NBA in LA, like around the Staples Center and with all the other colleges that are nearby. Again, the only reason I'm picking colleges is simply because they're empty right now. All the colleges have switched to distance learning. So campuses are empty, so their gyms and their practice facilities are empty, So
Yeah.
that would even be, an option. I would just rather see them like if they do pick the college route, I would rather see them pick like a D2 school, a school that could really use a school and a conference that could really use the money.
And just
Because
the facilities be the
right, because I'm an Ohio State honk. I mean I love Ohio State, but God bless them, Ohio State has enough money. Like they're gonna be fine. They're gonna be okay. They don't need to. They don't got to pay bills. You know,
Mhm.
they're golden. So let's just not worry about them.
So these, of course, are the threats. Well, really, the organizations and the conferences and the leagues that have been affected directly. But of course, looming down the line is the NFL season. Really, the only thing giving people hope right
Right.
now for sports continuing has been the NFL season in the distance. They're in this same boat right now of OTAs would start soon. The NFL draft is going to be soon. What teams during this shutdown, truthfully, do you think are going to be the most affected if this continues into the early summer months as predicted? What teams lacking those OTAs do you think will affect the most?
Any team with a new head coach, um, simply from the scouting report, what they're able to do pre-draft with the social distancing, any team in the top 10, that's the first 10 picks, those guys are severely handicapped.
Hmm.
Um, I think, believe it or not, I think the Patriots are in trouble simply because Tom Brady left. Tampa Bay is also in trouble because they just got Tom Brady.
Hmm.
So any team that A has a new head coach, any team that's picking in the top 10, any team that has a new relationship between quarterback and head coach, because that's new systems to learn. And the way you do that is through OTAs and working with your people. And right now, you can't work with your people.
Yep.
I mean, athletes are having a hard enough time just trying to find a place to work out. I mean, you have to spend so much I mean, granted, a lot of gyms are empty because you can't go to the gym anymore, but to rent the gym out just to work, and I assume, if they're a business, they're going to be charging, you know, major league prices for that athlete to come in and work out
Mhm.
because you have to wipe down everything, re-sanitize everything. You know, it's a nightmare. And the hardest thing about this is through every major American tragedy. I mean, I'm talking through wars, right? World War I, World War II, right? 9/11, Vietnam. All of these trying times as an American, we turn to sports for an escape, for a sense of togetherness. But this virus, this microscopic thing that we can't see, we can't punch it in the next week, we can't nuke it or blow it up. It's this minuscule thing that we can't really fight other than to stay home and stay away from everybody has stripped us of our one release. It's like, I feel like a Linus who lost his blanket. I don't know what the heck to do with myself at this point.
I agree with you wholeheartedly on that. That sports is the escape. It's the thing that gets us out of our lows and all the emotional triggers that sports does. But I also agree with you in the first question of what teams are going to be the most affected. I wrote down a couple specific teams. Your Cleveland Browns are going to be very much affected. The Dallas Cowboys, with a new coach and a quarterback right now who, for whatever reason, they're not putting money that they should into.
That's like an hour-long. Tubby is going to
Discussion
be
in
on
itself.
one. Yeah. Yeah.
I agree with you in the New England Patriots. Any team that's getting a new quarterback. So the New England Patriots, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Indianapolis Colts with Phillip Rivers coming over, the Cincinnati Bengals when they draft Joe Burrow number 1. These teams are going to be in trouble. So what teams are going to be successful? The ones who are quote unquote running it back. The New Orleans Saints will be perfectly fine. The Minnesota Vikings will probably be perfectly fine. The Green Bay Packers. Those are the teams that I look at to be like they are my favorites. They're all in the NFC right now, but
Kansas City.
The teams with veteran quarterbacks who are coming back, who have stuck with their coaches, will be the most calm out of them and be the most ready.
Yep.
So again,
so that means Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh would be my team in the AFC, although Ben's coming back from an injury, which gives me a little hesitancy on that.
I don't know. I would look more to, I think this will be Kansas City's year and Baltimore. Just simply because of how hard it is for people to game plan for Lamar Jackson.
Mm-hmm. I'll give you Kansas City because, they just won the Super Bowl. They're clearly a great team. And they were the team that has been together the most recent out of the other ones. San Francisco would be in there too. Right. I would say Baltimore would be a team that could be interesting. Again, although Lamar Jackson and planning for a Lamar Jackson-led offense also takes some time because he can do so much, which is both a benefit to him and also a detriment into figuring out plays for him. It's a fun detriment, but it's that little thing. But it'd be the Saints would be my team that I think could get through this the best out of really any of the teams.
Yeah, because I mean arguably they have the top flight quarterback with his head coach.
Mm-hmm.
That's an established relationship. The next closest one I would say would probably be it's a tie. It has to be Aaron Rodgers with LaFleur and Mahomes with Reed.
Yeah.
So I mean, maybe Philadelphia,
I
maybe
think I think Philly
as a long shot, like an outside four. You know what I
I
mean? If 2 or 3 and tie.
Yeah, and with Carson Wentz too, he is, yes, also coming off an injury, but it happened in the very last game of the year. So I think Philly would be a team. They've won a Super Bowl together. Wentz didn't play in that game, but he was a part of that team that won a Super Bowl together. So that would be another team that I think would be the most okay. They had a lot of moving parts this year, though, with injuries to all their skill positions, which is the only thing that could potentially hurt them. That, relationship between quarterback and receiving core and quarterback and running back and that kind of thing, which would be the only hesitation with Philly's offense.
Yeah. Maybe outside, thinking Seattle with Pete Carroll,
Absolutely, Seattle. Seattle
you
would
know?
be one of the. I mean, the NFC looks fine because they're
Yeah.
the ones who haven't changed. The AFC seems to be just rolling with Kansas City. Although Houston and Tennessee, with Tennessee giving Tannehill that big contract, I think they'll be okay. It's a coach and a quarterback staying. Those are the teams that are going to be the most comfortable uh, if the offseason gets put on hold.
Right.
And looking at it's just that's just the way it is. So speaking of the NFL offseason, really the only thing happy to talk about in the offseason has been
Mm-hmm.
potential. We all feel like Browns fans right now because of
Oh,
potential being the thing that's getting us through
I,
with free agent signings. Don't lie to me, it's true. Uh,
well, I mean, here's the thing. Like, I was so hyped on my Cleveland Browns, and I know I do this every show, and I swear, I promise you, I'm going to keep it short. But I was so hyped because I loved Freddie Kitchens. I loved what he did with Baker Mayfield the year before. And I thought with Baker Mayfield, Odell Beckham, Jarvis Landry, Hollywood Higgins, um, our running backs, Kareem Hunt coming in, Nick Chubb doing his thing. Like, I thought, finally we have an offense. And I thought with Myles Garrett and that defense that we were finally going to be stout. And, we have a powerful defense. And now we have, an offense that's going to put up more than 20 points a game. And then, wah, wah, wah. Cleveland finds the biggest way to Cleveland
yep.
ever in the history of Cleveland.
Yes, indeed.
And, it just, the wheels just fell right off. And and amazingly, the owner had the audacity to raise the price of season tickets.
Well, it's always hope that gets them through. Anyway, I will say in terms of that with Cleveland, and the thing that happened is Baker tried to do too much offensively and didn't have the coach to tell him not to. Continuing on. So let's talk about NFL free agents. What has been, other than Tom Brady, unless
Mm-hmm.
that is your answer, what has been the best signing this offseason?
Oh, good Lord. Um, it's kind of hard to tell because, like, I hate doing this because it's almost like doing like the way too early
Yeah.
predictions. Like, we might as well just whip out the schedules and play the schedule game at this point, and think that they're accurate because you sign a free agent and yeah, they might have produced last year, but this year now you're in a different system, unless they went with a coach that had left, I I don't know. I think I guess I just have to go with money and go with Tom Brady that he's finally getting what he's worth. I mean, he took one for the team for so many years to establish the Patriot way to get him weapons.
Mm-hmm.
And the only reason the Patriots went as far as they did last year was simply because Tom's old butt carried them all.
All the way, yeah.
I mean, all of them 100% of the time.
Mm-hmm.
So, I kind of saw the writing on the wall. And this next season will actually answer a lot of questions. Is Tom Brady simply a system quarterback? Is Bill Belichick really that great of a coach without Tom? You know, like it was almost time, like these two needed to separate because it was either these questions were never going to get answered and they retire together, or they're going to separate it and answer these questions. So that's going to be fun.
Mhm. Look, my top signing other than Brady, I think, is Teddy Bridgewater to the Carolina Panthers. You got a new coach coming in Matt Rule. He brought in Joe Brady, who we saw what Joe Brady did when he had Joe Burrow, who, by the way, Joe Burrow was a quarterback who no one expected to be this good as he was last year, and turned Burrow into Joe Burrow.
Right.
So Joe Brady being the new coordinator there, plus Teddy Bridgewater, who was great in his relief time with the Saints this past year, was undefeated as a starter. I think those two together in that division, granted Brady's now there and Breeze is there and Matt Ryan is there. That is a very good quarterback conference. But I think Bridgewater fitting into that system, granted, they're going to have a tough time. We just talked about the offseason with all those new parts being in there. But I think ultimately down the line, Bridgewater finally leading a team, I think is in the right spot where he is in Carolina.
Yeah. See, I liked Bridgewater. I liked Bridgewater in Minnesota. You know, I always thought he was a good quarterback. I just thought he needed a little more help.
Yeah.
At the time, Minnesota wasn't designed to go with him. He wasn't going to get a whole lot of help there. So that he found a new home in New Orleans and was able to sit behind Breeze and kind of get some education, I think that helped him. I think that helped him a lot. I don't know 100% for sure that Carolina is going to be the best situation for him. I hope that he is, but I also hope that they have a line for him that he doesn't have to run for his life. Because the only reason that Cam, and I hate to say it because I never liked Cam Newton. Never did. Never did. However, he did take entirely too many hits for an NFL top tier quarterback. You know, he just did. Carolina never protected him at all, ever. That guy was forever running for his life, and he took way too many hits, which had to like decrease his production. So I don't blame that whole situation on Cam Newton.
No. And I think, I don't know. I just think that was a team that needed a facelift, so to speak. Ron Rivera is a good coach. Clearly, he's a head coach somewhere else in the NFL. Cam Newton will be a quarterback somewhere else in the NFL. They just needed a new look. They needed a facelift, so to speak, in Carolina. And I think Bridgewater, with the new pieces that are in there, I think works extremely, extremely well. One of the questionable signings I have, which I don't know if you'll have, but you'll agree with me. We all know the news earlier in the year. That was the trade that made no sense in Houston with a great receiver being traded for a late stages of his career running back and a second-round pick. Houston then decided to try to find the replacement for DeAndre Hopkins with Randall Cobb, a 3-year, $27 million deal. That's my biggest
Yeah. I totally agree. I think they overpaid Cobb. Cobb's streaky at best. Cobb's best years were early in his career at Green Bay. His production as of late, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't know. They way overpaid for him by a lot.
You know, I think I've always said, and I'll stand by this, that I don't think a team needs a dominant receiver to be great, but it certainly helps.
Right.
when you have that, a receiver is like the icing on the top of a birthday cake. It adds, but it's not the cake. Like it,
It's definitely. I mean, it's not even the frosting; it's the candles on the cake. You know, if you can get, you build an offense from the inside out, right? So you build your line, you get your quarterback, right? Those are your top two priorities:
mhm.
your line and your quarterback, and not just any quarterback, a quarterback that fits your system that you want to run. So don't try to run like a Lamar Jackson offense with Tom Brady.
Mhm.
You know, Tom Brady's great, but he's not going to be great in a Lamar Jackson system. It's just not going to happen. So get the quarterback that you want to fit your system, get your line to protect them, and then build out from there. Get you a running back that can block, then get you a receiver. And he doesn't have to be fast and he doesn't have to be, make a big splash, if you will. He just has to understand the offense and run his route correctly. That's it.
I will say this with Bill O'Brien, because everyone seems to throw the blame on him, and I'm not just going to defend him because of that logo on the poster. I honestly, you look at what Bill O'Brien has done as a coach. Houston has been in the playoffs for the last couple of years. They haven't gone past the playoffs, obviously. But remember, he got to the playoffs with TJ Yates as a quarterback.
Right. But I mean, look at the division they're
As
in.
the Texans coach, who has not been they've only been around since 2002, but they have been slop since then. And he was really the guy to get them to where they are, which is a steady contributor and a steady contender. They have a quarterback who they really like, who I really like, in Deshaun Watson. I think he knows how to get the most out of the least, and which is why I think he was okay with the Hopkins trade. Hopkins trade. My only thing with him is they don't have a first round pick. They should have gotten a first round pick out of it. If because he wanted a raise is the main reason why you traded him, which a lot of reports say, get a first round pick for that guy. Get a first round pick because you don't have one. Miami is sitting there with your pick because you overpaid for Laramie Tunsil.
Right. Well, I mean, just because I wanted to be ignorant and I wanted to argue with you, I
Yes.
had to look it up. So in Houston's division, right, the AFC South,
Mm-hmm.
they're in a division with the Tennessee Titans, the Indianapolis Colts, and the Jacksonville Jaguars,
Mm-hmm.
right? Who we might as well call the London Jaguars because they're about to move overseas. They played over there so much. And their season has been so horrible forever. The Colts have been horrible, all except maybe two out of whatever, how many years Luck played for them. You know, I think he only gave them two good seasons. The Titans have been historically AC doocy bipolar. So, of course, Houston's going to be the best team out of it. I mean, all you had to do was be stable. Last year, they finished, 10-6, and the Titans finished 9-7. Colts were 7-9, and Jacksonville was 6-10.
I think, though, it goes to a coach to be able to weather the storm that has been the AFC South because you've had teams streaky. You've had a great Indy team with Andrew Luck. Then remember, with Blake Bortles just 2 years ago, that team was in the AFC Championship game.
No.
They had a great defense, and this Houston team has figured out a way to get into the playoffs. And the Titans are the rising team right now in that conference. So, with all that being said, I'm going to stick by I think Bill O'Brien's a dang good coach. Probably not the greatest GM in the world, but he's a great coach. And if Houston ultimately, after this year, decides to move away from him, he will get another head coaching job in the NFL. Guaranteed.
Probably with Cleveland.
Well, if you fire your head coach after 1 year, sure.
Why not? We've done it the last 3 years,
Exactly.
so why
Well,
not?
no, you stuck with a coach who went winless.
Oh yeah,
That's the one that you've kept longer than a year.
yeah. He went what 2-32?
Oh man.
Yay!
Yeah. So let's roll this. Let's have some fun here because we've been talked about a lot of negative stuff. But
Okay.
it's very surprising when you look at it, but there are 3 former number 1 overall picks who are free agents right now,
Mm-hmm.
which is just mind-boggling to me. And of course, that's Jameis Winston, Cam Newton, Jadeveon Clowney. Let's play a game with these groups to be what is the best landing spot for them, what is the most intriguing landing spot for them, and then what is your dream landing spot with them. Let's start with Jameis Winston, the guy who, when we were in college, was going through his last years in college and his first couple of
Mm-hmm.
years and had some fun that included crab legs there.
Yep.
Tubby?
Yep. So Jameis Winston and all the crab legs he can take.
There it is. So let's start with what is the best landing spot for Jameis Winston, you think?
Believe it or not, Baltimore.
I'd explain.
I think I think he would be really good behind Lamar Jackson, and I think that run and gun type multi-use type offense may suit him rather than trying to be a more because they run Baltimore is, with Lamar Jackson is now running a um, an SEC or Ohio State type offense where the quarterbacks, yeah, he throws the ball and he's capable of throwing the deep ball, but he's also required to run a lot too. And I think Jamison could actually flourish behind that because he's not going to be asked to make a whole lot of passes.
You know, I think Jameis Winston is a guy who can make, he proved he can make the throws, he just doesn't make great decisions. I think that's what happened when you're 30 and 30
Yeah.
touchdowns to interceptions. You can make the throw, you just kind of make bad decisions and throw it into double coverage and just hope that Mike Evans and Chris Godwin bailed you out, which they did a lot of the time. So I'm thinking, who is a quarterback in this league that is a big arm quarterback that really can help him make the right decisions? And you might be thinking Pittsburgh initially. I thought about it, but I decided against it. You know where I think the best landing spot for Jameis Winston to be? Is the Detroit Lions. I think you have him sit behind Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford's a guy who Detroit's not really hung up on. So if Stafford doesn't fit there, you have Jameis right behind to take over and take charge. Matt Stafford's a guy who knows how to put up stats, that's for sure, and can help Jameis Winston make that right decision, which is why I like Winston in Detroit. Plus, of course, there has been that off-season trouble with Winston in his past. Detroit's kind of a place where it doesn't get a lot of sports attention right now. So he can kind of hide away, sit there, and learn from a very good quarterback in Matthew Stafford and be an effective starter down the line.
I just don't like their head coach. I don't think that their head coach is really much of a disciplinarian. And I know that's hard to say, him coming from the Belichick tree. But I don't, having a defensive minded coach as your head coach, I don't think is the best option for Jameis Winston. I think you need, if not there, then I think going and being with Pete Carroll in Seattle would be an ideal option for him. I think that was the next one, wasn't it?
Your most intriguing option, yeah.
Yeah, I think going to Seattle would be the most intriguing for me. You know, because then he gets to sit behind oh crap, what's his name? That guy.
Russell Wilson,
Yeah, that guy. Wilson.
one of the best maybe quarterback in the NFL, other than Pat Mahomes. I'll say it
Yeah,
again.
yeah, no, it's just Mahomes. But yeah, I mean, if he sat behind Wilson, I think Wilson could be. I think he's old enough and seasoned enough now in the league that he could bring a young guy like Jameis under his wing,
Hmm.
and say, listen here, young blood, let me fix you, you know, and 1 or 2 seasons there, he might be productive.
So my most intriguing option for Jameis Winston, again, with Jameis is odd because not a lot of people have an idea of what team would be interested in Jameis Winston. So it's all pretty much speculation right now. But my most intriguing for Jameis is actually Denver. The big arm quarterbacks tend to do well in
Right.
Denver.
In the thin air, makes sense.
Jake Plummer was a big arm quarterback and had his most successful seasons in Denver because of the big arm. Jameis Winston could fit in Denver. They have Drew Lock, who they're going to go with, who's a young quarterback. But the track record right now in Denver has not been great in drafting quarterbacks. You're basing Drew Lock on a couple games, a game, and him dancing. That video of him dancing to be your quarterback. Plus John Elway's there, who really could still help Jameis Winston if Winston is there battling for a spot. I'm intrigued by Jameis Winston
Well,
in
it
Denver.
depends. I mean, did they loosen the cannabis laws in this new CBA that they signed?
Yes.
Because I mean, recreational marijuana is illegal there. So I mean, I'm not saying that he has a drug problem, but I'm not willing to tempt fate. You know what I mean? Like if I'm Colorado, like if I'm Denver,
You
I'm not
surround
signing
Jameis
Josh
with the right
Gordon.
people, he'll be fine, I think.
Yeah.
He'll be fine, no matter what.
All right.
And now
Dream job.
dream landing spot for Jameis Winston.
The Ukrainian Football League, so I never have to hear about him again. And
Oh,
yes, it's a
my.
real thing.
The XFL? Is that what I thought you were going to go
No,
with.
not the XFL because we'd have to see them. No, it's the Ukrainian League.
All right.
We have a fellow alumni that's playing out there.
All right, I'm going to
Yeah,
move
that would be my dream place
completely
for him.
past your answer there and say it's obviously the New England Patriots is the dream location for Jameis Winston.
No, it's
Brady
too.
goes, takes his job. He takes Brady's job. Bill Belichick working with Jameis Winston. I'd be interested in it. That'd be incredible for me. Plus, of course, New England, the whole crab leg things. I thought you would love that aspect of it, Tubby. Come on,
I
man.
do. I'm just tired of talking about the kid because I really don't like him. But I mean, it would be so poetic, though. I mean, could you imagine like they face each other in the playoffs because Tom Brady is that good of a quarterback? He can carry any team to the playoff. You know what I mean? And Belichick, if he's really that coach, he could take Jameis to the playoffs. But imagine if they faced each other.
Oh, yes.
Like that would just be, I don't know, the cat's meow. Like, and then
You
Belichick
have to face each other in the Super Bowl.
beats Brady. You know what I mean? Or Brady beats Belichick. Like, holy cheese and crackers! Like the tickets would just fly off the shelves. That'd be the most watched game ever.
So, from a player you just now said you don't like to a player earlier in this that you also said you don't like, but was also a first-round draft pick, Cam Newton, now a free agent, probably the best available free agent. What is the
Yeah,
best landing spot for Cam Newton?
New England.
Hmm.
I think out of the quarterbacks available, I think he's best fit up there, and I think he's the most seasoned. I think that Belichick will scheme to protect him, knowing that as long as we get Cam some protection, he can put the ball anywhere. The only thing that has me a little bit worried about Cam in New England is how flamboyant Cam is with his sense of style and his entrance and his post-game interviews. It's very Cam is very his own person,
Mm-hmm.
and Cam gonna say what Cam want to say, right? Not to say that he has an attitude problem because he's never been that way. Like he's not one to throw shade either, you know. but I don't think he's a toe the company line kind of guy like Brady is, And I think for that cold, because the people up there are just cold, right? Like Boston is just like Boston is just like Tim. If you're watching, I'm sorry, but Boston is just a cold and bitter place. Our friend Kim, who's the resident Boston Red Sox fan, and all that, you know what I'm saying? So I'm apologizing to her in advance because she's going to watch.
Okay. So to walk your stuff back, because you said his best landing spot's a spot that he might not fit in. His best landing spot is clearly the LA Chargers because he can be that flamboyant. He can be Cam Newton, plus he will be a starting quarterback in Los Angeles. Cam Newton's best landing spot is the Chargers. They whiffed on Tom Brady. You might as well go get the next best available, which is Cam Newton. Because Tyrod Taylor, you should know, is not going to be your starting quarterback. Plus, you get Cam there, and you get an early draft pick that you don't have to spend on either trading up for Tua or Justin Herbert, who a lot of people have question marks on, or Jordan Love, who I have question marks on.
See, I don't like him in LA because I think there's too many distractions, and I don't think that LA can come up with a scheme that once he becomes quarterback, that because he'll beat Tyrod. I mean, he'll beat him out of camp if they have camp, But I don't think that they have the ability to design an offense around Cam that'll really help Cam.
If they have Tyrod there, they're the same style of quarterback, but obviously Cam Newton is a much better quarterback with the same style. You can come up with what you want to do, just like right now with Baltimore when they have Lamar Jackson and backups RG3. They're similar in style. You can come up with one offense and you don't have to work.
Well, the difference is that Tyrod only sees the one side of the field. He only throws the one side. Like the entire left side of the field does not exist to Tyrod Taylor. I'm telling you that now, and I'm saying it with love. So difference there is Cam sees the entire field and can throw to the entire field. I just think that professionally, yeah, he'd have more opportunities, and yeah, he could probably, pursue his own interests just like LeBron did when LeBron went out there to LA. Like he could pursue his fashion line. It would be easier for him.
Stage of his career, though.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk you into it.
Dear God. But no, I just think football-wise, it would be a bad move for him. I don't think he'll have the level of success if he went like he would if he went to New England.
Moving on to the most intriguing option for Cam Newton.
Oh, Lord.
I don't
know. Yeah, somewhere I can argue with you about. How about that?
The most intriguing landing spot for Cam Newton is the Miami Dolphins. Because if they don't get Tua and Cam Newton's still available, bring in a guy like Cam Newton to run that offense. That team has not been shy of spending money this year in the offseason. Granted, it's been on the defensive side. You put Cam Newton in Miami, I think he fits. I think he fits what they want to do. I think it's very intriguing. It'll sell tickets. It's Cam Newton. So, plus he can be his, as you said, flamboyant self in Miami.
Fashion forward thinking. Right, yeah.
Even if they draft Tua, Cam Newton could be a spot for Newton.
Yeah, because Tua, I mean, honestly, if you're drafting Tua, granted he goes in the first round and he goes in the top 5, they're supposed to be NFL ready at that point, but I'm still gun shy with him. I'd rather like to have him sit a year behind somebody. And if Miami gets him and Cam, I think that would be a good combination.
And they still have Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Yeah.
And Josh Rosen, but he's gone.
Yeah, who you with a little bit more beard length will have a striking resemblance to.
That's what I'm going for.
Okay, well, it works for him.
So do you have a most intriguing, or should we move to dream location for Cam Newton?
Just move to dream, and then I'll argue with you about it.
All right, dream location for Cam Newton. pretty simple. It's the
Go ahead.
Washington Redskins.
Ooh,
Ron Rivera's there now.
right?
Might as well try to run it back. They are not sold on their man at quarterback, your man at quarterback, Dwayne Haskins. They're not sold on him. You missed the last play of your first win because you're taking a selfie with a fan. Yikes. You put Cam Newton back with Ron Rivera. It runs into the offense. It's a weaker division. I think it would work for the Washington Redskins to have Cam Newton as their quarterback.
Who's all in that division? It's what, them, the Giants, the Eagles, and the Cowboys, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So the only one you really have to worry about out of that is probably right now, hands down, probably the Eagles take that division.
I wouldn't say
But
hands
you got to
down.
remember that they're going to implement the new playoff rule, so now there's going to be
An
extra wild card. So there's a legit chance, that the rest of the NFC could be that terrible that they could get that 7th spot. Now, granted, they'd have to play the number 2 team.
Yeah. Tell me I'm wrong, though. And Cam Newton.
No, it makes a lot of sense.
Boom. Let's move on to the next former first-round pick, Jadeveon Clowney. Where is the best landing spot for Jadeveon Clowney?
Cleveland.
All right. Why?
All of them. For all of them. Dream job, intriguing, Because, he'd have the pressure off of him. He would just be on the other end and life would be groovy,
Mm-hmm.
Like he could still be a star, but he wouldn't have the pressure of stardom. Like he wouldn't be the face of that defense. Like life would be good.
All right. Look, I cheated. I put 2 for his best landing spot. But my most intriguing and dream are the same, so we'll get to that. His best spot is either to run it back with the Seattle Seahawks or go to the Miami Dolphins. I like how our best spots for both our teams. To go with the Miami Dolphins, who have been spending a lot of money, who need a pass rush. Miami struggled last year getting anyone to an opposing quarterback, made Eli Manning look like a great human being in his last ever game as a starting quarterback, like a great player, like the Hall of Fame. Granted, he threw interceptions, but they could not get to him. He had all day to throw, and that was all season long. Miami could not get to any quarterback. He's a player who can play in that hybrid 3-4 linebacker or 4-3 defensive end. He's that good of a player, that skilled of a player. You put him in Miami or Seattle, both of those teams do that very same thing. I think he fits.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not going to – he can play anywhere. So any team that's in need of a pass rusher, go get him.
Mm-hmm.
That's just it. The simple reason I want him in Cleveland is because we'd have bookends. Miles on one side, Clowney on the other. Who are you going to defend? You got to let one of them – you can't double team them both. Because then our nose is going to get you. So what are you going to do? So, he just fits anywhere. You just plug him in, go pay him what he wants. That's essentially what it's going to come down to is who's going to pay him the money that he wants, the money that he feels he deserves.
And my most intriguing, which is also my dream landing spot for him, for Jadeveon Clowney, is the Houston Texans. Could you imagine if he goes back to Houston, who also needs a pass rusher, and continues to roll with that team?
Right.
The pass rusher, they traded him. He might as well run it back with the Houston Texans. I think it'd be very intriguing, and that's where I want him to go. I want it to happen so bad.
Yeah, just to drink the tea on that one. That would be good. Oh, my. Yeah, that would be good for him. What happened to Eli Manning, by the way? Where did he retire or where did he go? Did he?
He retired. Speaking of retired, and maybe should, which we'll talk about. Look, our very first show, you want to know what our main debate was? Our very first show.
How overrated Joe Flacco was?
Is Joe Flacco elite? Was the first ever argument we had on a show together. So
Mhm.
let's do this game with Joe Flacco, because guess what? He's a free agent. What is his best landing spot? I'll start, Tubby, because you'll like it. His best landing spot's retirement row.
I agree. That's the most intriguing, and that's the dream location. Just
It's not for me,
hang it up, Joe. Go away, Joe. I'm tired of talking about Joe.
but it is the best spot for him right now. He worked as a backup last year, or as a starter backup, and it didn't work in Denver, where it probably would have worked with a big arm quarterback. But my most intriguing spot is for him to still be a mentor quarterback. And you know where it is? It's the New York Jets. For him to be a mentor for Sam Darnold, I think could be very interesting. Darnold did well when Josh McCown was his mentor.
Right.
I think if you put Joe Flacco in that spot, if Joe Flacco is willing to be a mentor figure to a Sam Darnold, I think it'd be a very good thing.
All right. Now, look, I don't know Joe. I don't know Flacco. Right. I don't. I've never met the man.
And you don't like
I probably never will. However, my impression of him, sight unseen, having never shook his hand or looked in his eye,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he has it in him to be a mentor quarterback. He's a quarterback that thinks he can still drive the buggy, and
Which
no,
might be good in the Jets. You never know. Your quarterback might miss games because of mononucleosis.
turf toe. That's what I'll have. Turf. I, I just don't think he can do it. I really don't. I mean, just sit down, Joe. I mean, you raked the league for enough money. You scammed all that you can scam. Just
You want
sit
to
down.
throw the ball.
Right. Like, don't your kids play sports that you want to go
And my
watch?
dream location, his brother's about to enter the league. My dream location for him, realistically, is the Dallas Cowboys. Same reasons for the New York Jets, but they're gonna end up not gonna pay Dak, and then Dak's gonna leave, and then Joe Flacco would be the Dallas Cowboy quarterback, and that would make me endlessly happy.
Just to watch them choke every Sunday. I just despise Joe. I really do.
Coming from a Cleveland Browns fan, because he played for the Cleveland Brown Baltimore.
Okay, that was rude and completely unnecessary.
And true.
Yeah, I need a smack button that like an emoji hand comes up and like covers your face. Like
Well, we have reached our hour, so let's move to kind of our parting shots. Let's start with you, Mr. Tubby Tubby. Parting shot for today.
Potting shot for today. I got really into watching docu-series because of lack of sport. I have two. All right. So I got into docu-series and I watched on Netflix. It's called England's Game, and it was about soccer or football, as they call it. And it was really intriguing.
It.
Yeah. It was really intriguing because it was about how they developed the rules and how the clubs happened and all that stuff. So that was pretty interesting. Like that was neat. It was historic, it was dramatic, and I didn't know the story, so it was really good. The second docuseries that I'm currently watching is called Sunderland Till I Die, which is about another English football club. And so I'm like really learning about soccer here. So that's kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is I was surprised at how desperate the 4-letter network is for content.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now I'm a gamer and I'm used to watching Twitch and watching my favorite streamers on Twitch play games. This Sunday, I had the pleasure/displeasure of watching ESPN. The first two broadcasts were okay. It was EA Sports Madden Championships, right? and they let gamers produce it, and it was very well done. They had commentators, they were very knowledgeable, they explained the sport, they explained esports because it's different, and they explained all the rules and how things happen, and they were really informative, and it was really entertaining, and I loved it. Then at 6 p.m., it switched over to this NBA players play NBA 2K.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my word. Like, I mean, I've seen bad broadcasting before, but this was like desperate. This was like making a girl a mixtape and then standing out in front of her house in the rain, playing it as loud as you can with your Bluetooth speaker. Just for her to come out of the house with her big lineman boyfriend who's like 6'3" and 260 and cut like a brick house, and realize, womp womp, you have no chance. This isn't, the Breakfast Club. You aren't going to get the chick at the end. It was so bad. I mean, it was such a disaster. I felt so bad for them. But I get it. The NBA is still trying to grasp at straws to stay relevant, to stay in people's minds. But brother, this wasn't it. You needed to go in the back of the production truck and scrounge together 4 nerds to put together a better broadcast than what you put out, because it was embarrassing, in my opinion.
Oh,
Okay, I'm done.
that's fantastic. All right, my parting shot, and you actually touched on exactly what I was going to say there at the end earlier in the broadcast here, Tubby. But in this time of real uncertainty, sports and the speculation of sports is still our escape. That's why we're doing this show. That's why a lot of the shows are still speculating on what the NFL could do, because right now it's that glowing light at the end of the tunnel and any sort of return to normalcy. That's what we're looking for. That's what sports still at this point can provide. Yes, there is no new drama. There is no new exciting play to happen. You're not going to see a world-class athlete doing something that no one has ever seen in the near future, but still there is sports. There is still ways to realize that at this time people need an escape. And I've seen on social media when people have radio shows, there's been people who've gotten mad at sports world and sports media for talking about sports reaction to COVID-19. It's the escape for a lot of people. Yeah, this is a more serious issue than sports related to it, but sports even now is still going to provide that escape. And that's going to do it for me. Look for that escape, find that escape. Enjoy your time with your family if you're with your family. Enjoy your peace and quiet if you're with quiet, but find something that makes you feel happy. And that's going to be the key to getting through this. So, Tubby, thank you so very much for this first show. I'm Drew Patrick. That's Tubby Schmidt saying so long, and we will see you next time. Thanks for watching.